I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. I'm excited to have today's guest back. His name is Andrew Klavan. Many of you will know him from the Daily Wire or perhaps his award-winning novels. He's written a lot of screenplays, too. So he's a writer, a storyteller, and just an overall joy to talk to. And so I'm glad to have him on the program today. I want to show you his latest book, just out. It's called The Kingdom of Cain. The subtitle is Finding God in the Literature of Darkness. Yes, you heard me correctly, so you know this will be an interesting conversation. Andrew Klavan, welcome back to Life Today Live.
It's good to be back, Randy. Thanks for having me.
I enjoy the conversations, and this one I went, okay. And it just strikes me because, well, a lot of people ask me, you know, what my favorite Christian movie is, and I have said, not entirely tongue-in-cheek, 7.
Yep.
And I think you'll get that, right?
Yes, I do.
So explain where you're coming from in the Kingdom of Cain.
Well, the book that really turned my soul toward God and ultimately toward Christ, though it took decades for me to get there. When I was 19, I read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, which is a book about an axe murderer who is essentially pointed to redemption by the work of a prostitute. And I always think to myself, if I walked into a Christian bookstore and said, could I get that book about the axe murderer who's saved by a prostitute? They would look at me, maybe they just toss me out on my ear. And yet I really believe very strongly that art, especially when it's truly art and not just, trash, but when it's truly art, is the work of the Spirit, even in people who don't believe in the Spirit. And because of that, I believe it reveals God even when it deals with the ugliest of subjects, just like the world reveals God, even in all its ugliness. And one of my problems with modern Christian art is it is afraid to go there. It will not talk about anything but the comforting and the pleasant and the family-oriented, which makes it weak in a way, because it means that when you run into the truth about life, you lose your faith. And I believe, as I wrote in a book, I had a preacher say in a book before I was a believer, you have to believe in a God of the sad world, because God is God of this world, not of some fairy land that we make up.
Yeah, and a lot of the Christian films are made to kind of uplift or entertain Christians, but they don't reach a lost world, which I just think there's room for both in the world of the arts, and I think we're moving there some. But here's a question, because one of the objections to just the existence of God is the presence of evil and suffering. And yet you seem to be promoting the idea that you can find God somehow, even in evil and suffering. How do we reconcile
more
that?
More than that, I'm actually making the argument in the last 30 pages of the book, which I will tell you, in my humble opinion, is the best 30 pages I've ever written about anything, is an argument that art is a kind of theodicy being the study of evil and God, because it doesn't try to make art doesn't try to make a logical case that, oh, God is doing this or God is doing that, or he's using evil to do good, or he's allowing freedom and therefore evil has to exist. It simply says, if a man can make something as beautiful as, say, Michelangelo's Pietà out of a tragedy as great as the crucifixion of Christ and the death of a mother's son, what beauty exists in God's overall creation, even though he's making it out of a world so full of sin and evil? Beauty, I really do believe, is a direct expression of God's personality. I mean, when you see beauty in the forest or in the clouds, it doesn't have a message. It's not saying to you, be happy, be faithful, or anything like that. It's an expression of personality, and art is the same thing. It's an expression of the soul. And I think that when people make a beautiful movie like Psycho, for instance, out of a horror, like a mass murderer, you start to see like, oh wait, there is something in the spirit that somehow transubstantiates evil into beauty, and that to me gives me tremendous faith. And in each of the book, Kingdom of Cain is basically an exploration of certain murders that recur again and again, inspire again and again works of art. And the argument I make is that if you read these works of art, movies and books and works of philosophy, if you read them closely and honestly, you see that they actually tell you something about the roads we go down to evil and the roads we don't have to go down and the roads we can go down to someplace else, even when the author doesn't mean that to happen.
So, just as a fundamental question, you're not. What is your view? Is God the author of evil? I guess I would say.
I don't think God is the author of evil. I think God has an overall plan that allows evil to take place because obviously this seems kind of obvious to me. I mean, a lot of people don't think it's worthwhile, but it seems obvious that you must be free in order to develop the choice to love God that makes you fully human. And if God just said, well, pow, you are making that choice, you wouldn't be fully human. So it's kind of a paradox built into the system, but it's a very beautiful paradox. And the argument that you get from a lot of philosophers is, I don't care. It's not worth it. It is not worth it. The torture of a child, the suffering of people in illness, the terrible things that happen is not worth it for whatever God is doing. And my point about art is that it points to this mysterious thing that we don't really have a big enough mind to conceive of the incredible beauty that might be involved in God's overall design. We have faith in it. We believe it's there. And art, I think, reminds us that even a human being can create beauty out of terrible things. Mm-hmm. But we have to have some kind of faith and trust that this beauty beyond imagination is there in order to live in the world that we live in.
You have a recurring theme. Because I watch your show and stuff. This idea of beauty. I don't know, how did this develop? Is this a personal thing with you?
No, I think, well, I have always, in the dedication to this book, I mentioned a quote by John Keats when he was dying, and he sent a message to his friends and he says, I love the principle of beauty in all things. And I think that this has been true of me since I was a little boy. Mm-hmm. And I think that the things that I loved, I mean, I remember this passion I had, for instance, of lying on the ground and looking up through the branches of trees at the sky. Mm-hmm. And now when I think of that, it does speak to me of the profundity of the fact that we have to find God in man. We have to find the eternal in the incidental, in the things that we live in. And at the time, I didn't think it was a message. I just thought it was beautiful, Yeah. And I think every time I encounter beauty, I find that I am seeing something that goes beyond the words that we use, that sometimes fall short, that often fall short. I think of our description of what it is we're feeling when we communicate with God and when we touch the hem of the garment of the eternal. I mean, there's this kind of thing that we try to communicate to one another, and it ends up sometimes sounding pious or I don't know, holier than thou or whatever. And yet in the experience, it's just this experience of pure beauty. And so I think I've always tried to tell the truth in my work, but I've always tried to tell it beautifully so that you didn't walk away and think like, that showed me some dark things, but it didn't show me these dark things in a way that, tore my soul. It showed me dark things in a way that restored my soul.
Yeah. I mean, is it fair to say that if you're going to create art that features darkness or evil, that there has to be some sort of redemptive value to it?
I think yes, but I think it's there almost automatically if you tell the truth. And the reason I think this is I don't believe in God because I think it's good for me or because I think it makes me a nicer person or society is better. I believe in God because I'm almost absolutely positive that he's actually there. So I believe in him in the same way I believe in gravity. You can't see gravity, but if you live without gravity, you're not going to have a happy life. And so if I tell a story that is true to life, even if it's a story about, an elf in getting rid of a magical ring, but if it's somehow true to life, it is going to express God. It's going to express the moral order that God ha has created. And so even the ugly things in it will reveal that moral order. Perfect example is the play Macbeth, one of my favorite plays, which is about a guy who does incredible evil in that play. And at the end, he makes one of the most beautiful speeches in Shakespeare about how the life is meaningless. That's the speech he makes. Life is meaningless as a tale told by an idiot. It signifies nothing. And yet, as you're watching it, you realize, because of the way Shakespeare has constructed the play, you realize that that's not Shakespeare speaking. That is a man who has cut himself off from the moral order. And now life is meaningless because he's cut himself off from God and from meaning. And so even though you're watching a guy just sink to the absolute depths of self-degradation, you are seeing something incredibly beautiful, which is there is a way not to do that. And that the world makes sense. The world that he is seeing makes sense in the context of what he's doing. It's an incredible revelation, I think. And I've seen it, I have to tell you, I've seen it in a minor way in working in Hollywood, for instance, where people sell their souls to get this thing that they think is so important, this fame and this money that they think is so important. And you look in their eyes and you think to yourself, I don't know what you did, pal, but whatever it is, I don't want to do it. And so it's instructive. You know, God sort of speaks to you even in sin, you know.
Yeah, I think C.S. Lewis talked about much of what we learn is via negativa, right? We can learn from the negative, and we do that. So in the Kingdom of Cain, why Cain in particular?
Well, I wanted to pick murders that were revelatory. You know, there are plenty of murders that have inspired a lot of art. Jack the Ripper, who I don't deal with at all, has inspired probably more works of art, or if you want to call them that, more stories than anybody else. But I wanted to deal with murders that I thought were essential, and they inspired artists because they were essential. And there is no murder more essential than the murder of Abel by Cain. It is literally the first thing that happens after the fall. And to me, it sets the pattern of history in so many ways. So among the murders that I was dealing with was the murder by Cain. And I was pointing out that after the fall, really it is the kingdom of Cain. It is a kingdom that is run not, is run by the enemy. It is a kingdom that is dominated by evil. And so my point was that we are called to rejoice, and we are called to live in beauty, and we're called to live in true joy. I mean, that's what Christ said. He said, I'm here to put the joy that's in me, in you, in the kingdom of Cain, in this world of truly terrible things that happen. And we can't do that by hiding our eyes. You know, I don't think we can do it by saying, well, that's not the world, because then you don't see the beauty of God's plan. I mean, that's why I say you have to believe in a God of the sad world, or you're not believing in a God of any world that we know. I mean, what other world is there but this sad one? And so he must mean us to rejoice here. And that's kind of what the book is about and what it's trying to get at.
Yeah, there's a natural tension there. I was in South Sudan not too long ago, and we're visiting areas where literally we buried a child. I just say they buried a child one day at a clinic because the child didn't survive. And when people ask me, what did you see? My response was great sadness and great joy. And you kind of go, okay, why? And for me, and I'm curious how you see this. For me, yes, there's the sadness and the suffering, no doubt about it. I mean, it's a hard place over there. But there's joy knowing, there's joy in a couple of things. There's joy in the faith that those people have who have nothing, which is amazing. But there's also joy in knowing that I'm in a position, and our organization is in a position to do something about the suffering, to alleviate the suffering, to step into what is a very dark place and shine some light. Does that theme resonate with you?
I think that what you're talking about is the result of the joy that's in you, that you do that because of the joy that's in you, which is actually overrides, is bigger, I think, than what you're talking about. That is a joy. What you're talking about is a joy, and the faith of people with nothing is humbling at all times. But it is really because you're living in joy that you are able to do that. And the example that I always give, I mean, I think that Christians, ultimately, if you are an honest Christian, you ultimately see the evil of the world. Yeah. You can't walk around and say that the world is just a great place and everything is going absolutely great, And that is, I find that is a moment in the growth of Christian people where a lot of people lose their way. They become very grim. They keep talking about the end of days as if they're just waiting for the curtain to come down. They begin to live into their death, not in the sense of dying to the world and living in Christ, but in the sense of just giving up on the world. And I feel that the Bible is telling us, no, you are meant to rejoice. And what I'm talking about is the joy that is kind of like talking about art. It's like watching a movie. You watch a movie and your favorite character in the movie dies. And you sit in the movie and you weep and you just sob because it's such a sad scene. And you walk out of the movie and someone says, "How was the movie?" And you say, "It was great." Right. Terrific. Right. And I think we're called to live on that some kind of level, like, because we believe in a bigger picture than the picture of life, an eternal picture. We're called to walk out of Sudan and say, there was horrible things and there were beautiful things, but somehow I have faith that this is a great movie, and the end is going to be terrific. And I think that that's the kind of joy I'm talking about.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like Schindler's List. Oh, it was great. I mean, it's terrible,
Great
but it
movie.
was great. All right, this is the book, The Kingdom of Cain. It's available. Go get it right now. Brand new, out by Andrew Klavan, and definitely will make you think. Is this going to be? Is this going to be a hard read for some people, you think?
I tried not to make it too grisly. Some of the murders are pretty bad, and I tried to tell you the facts, but without being exploitative and getting too grisly. But I think for most people, if you are not one of these people who has to always be comforted and always everything has to be upbeat, maybe you want to stay away from it. But if you are willing to say, actually my faith goes into these places and it is strong enough to go into these places and will be strengthened by going into these places. The second part of the book is an answer to all of the evil in it, and it's the things that we do, the practices in life that are creative practices and rituals and also self-explorations that make it possible to understand that even though we're dealing with evil, not just in the world, but in ourselves, we can come out of it and grow in joy. So I think it's a really hopeful book and an upbeat book, but it is a book that delves into some terrible things. And, like I said, I tried not to describe them in too much detail.
Right. Well, I mean, the fact is, on Netflix, when you start a series, it's got language and violence and it'll be like rape and then smoking. Anyway, but right. That one always I'm like, oh no, what's going on? Anyway, but my point is that if you were to make the Bible into a film and be true to the words, it would have all those warnings up there.
It's amazing. I get this letter all the time. You call yourself, I'm a crime writer, I write mystery stories. Right. And I get this, you call yourself a Christian, but you write about murder and you write about, sexuality and all this stuff. And I think, like, have you read the Bible? Because, one of my favorite Hollywood stories is when they made the movie Noah, which completely ruined the story by making it about environmentalism. Right. Christians didn't complain about that. They complained about the fact that Noah gets drunk in the movie. And I just think, that actually is in scripture. He actually does get drunk and lie around naked and drunk. So it is about that too. It does mention the fact that people kind of gloss over that stuff in the Bible, and they they read it with piety and they come out with pious lessons. But there's much more than that. All of life is in the Bible.
Well, and I think a lot of it's because people are uncomfortable with it, and they haven't taken the look that you have taken to say there is this darkness, but God is there not as the author of the evil, but in I don't know. Where the evil exists, God exists too. And if you're looking, you can find him. And I think that's an important message for people, especially those that are struggling. I think with the idea of God.
Yeah. I think it is. I know that the people that I talk to who are struggling with the idea of God not only struggle with the existence of evil, but they can't get past it. They can't see, right. Which is, I feel that's a little bit. Your idea of yourself is a little too big there. You might want to say, well, I'm not sure I actually can understand the designs of God. But I think that there are all kinds of hints around the world, around life, that show you that God is there. And maybe the most important hint is the beauty, the insane beauty of the world, and the kind of, what can I call it? Almost extra beauty. It's like it doesn't have to be there, and yet there it is.
Yeah.
And I talk about in the book, I talk about flying over the clouds and looking at this incredible view that didn't exist until airplanes were invented. Like nobody had seen it, and yet there it was, waiting to be discovered as beauty. And I think that there's so much of that in the world, and even in our sorrows, there is a kind of beauty, and in suffering, even though we all want to avoid it. It is something that afterwards a lot of people say, wow, that made me deeper, richer, wiser, and more compassionate. So it's a complicated world.
Yeah. I purposely booked the window seat and recently flew over the mountains, and I'm just glued to the window. I'm like, wow, it's just,
I know.
I love it. Okay, I want to show people your website real quick. This is andrewklavan.com. You go there, you will see lots of books, because he's written lots of books, including the fiction books, if you want to check those out if you're not already a fan. So check that out on andrewklavan.com. And I want to ask you about that, because we're talking about art, we're talking about beauty, and the thing I've noticed, and I see it in music, I see it in film, I see it in storytelling, is that there is something there that reaches us almost on a level beyond our ears or our eyes, where we're watching and listening. And I don't fully understand it. I have a feeling you've thought about this a lot more than I have. What do you think that is, where art has this place that is almost it's tangible but yet intangible at the same time? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Art is the transmission of the inner world from me to you, from the artist to the person reading art, if that person will engage with it. And I think that because I truly believe that this inner life is a gift of the Spirit, and the Spirit comes through you, that even though it's me creating something, it is actually the Spirit creating something in the guise of me. And so I think that it actually links us together in that. And there's just something so, when it works and when it's real and when it's deep, there's something, it's not like any other experience we have. The only thing I can think of that's anything like it is loving people. When you love people, you have that thing too, where their joy becomes your joy and their sadness becomes your sadness, and that's that transfer of spirit. And the reason I'm writing these books is because for a long time we have been teaching people literature and art as if it had nothing to do with God, and I actually think that is physically impossible or spiritually impossible. And I think when I read Shakespeare and I read people who talk about Shakespeare without talking about God, I think you're not talking about what Shakespeare was doing. And he was doing it knowingly. I'm almost absolutely convinced of that. And so, I think that there's just something really magical about it. And it's the reason Christ told stories. It's the reason the Bible is full of stories. I think that it is the way in which we transfer the inner life to one another.
I love that. That's good. All right. Last question, and I'll let you go. And this is completely unrelated to your book, but I got to ask, because I got you here. And that's, right now we're doing the new media thing, the online media thing, right? And here at Life Today, we've been on television for 30 years, well, more than that if you go back. But I'm curious, because the Daily Wire has really done an amazing thing in my view. It's a lot harder than people think.
Yeah.
Where do you see media going? Because I'm watching ComScore and watching overall drop. You're watching all these apps pop up and carriers. That the television world is a real cyclone right now. Let me see. If someone was wanting to be effective to reach people through media in a broad sense, what would you tell them? Where do you start?
Well, I think, first of all, I have the Alfred Hitchcock rule of new technology. When new technology comes along, you should complain about it and then use it. And that's what Hitchcock used to do. He'd say, "Oh, sound, what a stupid thing to have movies with sound." And then he would put it to use more creatively than anybody else, And so I think that you shouldn't be afraid of technology. That writing is a technology, painting is a technology. And so this is a remarkable moment, because it is a moment when independence and small venues can make a tremendous impact. And that hasn't been true for a long time. For a long time, Hollywood is a hugely corporate industry. The publishing industry has been corporate. Video games, almost instantaneously, they were taken over by huge corporations and need immense infusions of money to come to life. but you don't need that much money to make things anymore. And the more technology improves, the more that will be true. And so what I would say to every creator, what I would say to every creative person is use the technology in new and creative ways. Don't be afraid to do that. But I would also say to the audience, look for the people who are off the beaten path. Look for the little corners, because what I'm looking for now is for some place online that's like the Greenwich Village of the 1960s, where all these kind of unknown artists, the Bob Dylans and the Joan Baez and all those people were there, and yet they exploded and became the culture. And I think that that's what's going to happen next, and I'm really excited about it. I hope I'm here to see some of it, and I hope this new generation that is embracing faith, embracing marriage, embracing family, which is wonderful to see. I hope they become a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, to use a verb tense Jesus used, it will be and already is.
Yes,
I think you guys are doing it. All right, Andrew Klavan, thank you so much. Wonderful talking to you, and keep up the good work.
Thanks. It's great to see you. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you guys watching. You can pick up The Kingdom of Cain wherever you get books. I love the PR people. They're always like, they want me to ask the guest, where can they get a copy of it? If you don't know where to get books, I don't know where you live, but you can pick up The Kingdom of Cain now. And if you haven't liked, follow, or subscribe, please do that. And check out the Daily Wire. See Andrew Klavan's show there. It's very enjoyable and entertaining. This is The Kingdom of Cain. We'll see you.